Hello there. I am Dr. Michael Kelton, a little World Cup reference for Spain and World Cup soccer happening this summer, but I'm recording a mock lesson for Denver School of Science and Technology. Start out, I'm sure you have my resume, but start out a little bit about me, and I thought I would do that in fluent Spanish just as a demo. Soy un maestro originario de Wyoming. Hace mucho tiempo, hace 20 años, me mudé a Colorado para asistir a la universidad. Me interesa mucho la música en vivo, la música popular, en mis dos idiomas, conciertos, y me gusta salir al aire libre también. Tengo 17 años dando clase de español, mayormente en Aurora, aquí en Colorado, dando todos los niveles, y he viajado a muchas partes. He tenido la suerte de viajar a muchas partes de la América Latina, y más recientemente fui a España para una excursión. Mis valores de educador son alegría, diversidad, la justicia social, la conciencia cultural. Tengo también programas graduados que me he matriculado y graduado, y me interesa mucho la instrucción inmersiva, la instrucción comprensible para los estudiantes, y materiales auténticos también. Vivo en el condado de Denver, y bueno, he tenido las experiencias de más también. Y a partir de eso voy a empezar mi lección. I'm going to start my lesson, and I set this up more for a Spanish 1. A little bit of background. I usually start out a warm-up where students would come in and take out a notebook where they keep their own notes on vocabulary. That's where I could take attendance, move around, say hola, ¿cómo están? Hello, how are you to students? And I encourage them when they finish to greet their partners, compañeros as well. Students do call me profe if I do use that verbiage, but it sounds a little more authentic than my gringo last name. But we usually start with a list of words, something compelling, something interesting, but starting out with the most common words according to frequency. So I set it up with the Spanish 1. A typical lesson would include comprehension, which is our standard. I'm very passionate about standards, space, and anchoring in standards. So the standard would be comprehension around reading. I will have a short story. So as I was saying, the standard would be around comprehension and listening, and the objective would be for them to understand a short story anchored in culture, something I do quite often in my lessons, but there are some alternatives that I'll show towards the end of the presentation. So I usually set up the criteria around either a summary or multiple choice to show me that they understand 75% for proficient work, and then to incentivize them to push themselves, I usually will have an advanced learning criteria, which in this case would be write an ending to the story, which is a little more challenging to go above and beyond the standard. So you see that what they would practice annotating and writing down, but you also see that they have gestures. A lot of times I'll pull real ASL gestures or something that is just easy. So this is the part of the lesson where I would, in Spanish, say, chicos, repitan, tiene, repita movimiento, the gesture. Repite. Le gusta. Clase, repitan. Le gusta. A mí me gusta. A ella le gusta. She likes. A él le gusta. And I would use examples in the class. Again, practicing the gesture. Quiere. 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 Clase, repite, quiere. Mira, yo quiero. So you can also play around with perspective and person in that as well. If I want to check for understanding, I will often snap. That's something I established very early as a norm. And a finger twirl for repeat. Clase, quiere. El chico quiere jugar fútbol. El chico quiere jugar fútbol americano. This point of the lesson, I would give them more repetition. Students need 7 to 10 repetition for short-term memory and 20 plus, depending on the individual, for long-term recall. So it's important that they hear it again and again within context and in a way that's compelling and interesting. Clase, ¿tú tienes un animal en la casa? And I would call on some students. Pedro, ¿tú tienes un animal en la casa? Clase, Pedro sí tiene animal. Sí, tiene animal en la casa. Clase, Pedro tiene un animal en la casa. Pedro, ¿tú tienes un perro? So I would do a little interview, and it's also compelling because it keeps the class interested in personal questions, not necessarily too personal, and they could always pass, but gives students a chance to respond and use the language, and it makes it a little more interesting than just dry examples. So I would do little mini interviews, maybe 2 or 3 students per person. Alicia, ¿tú tienes un perro en la casa? Un perro? I also, here and there, include pictures of my own dog. Mi perro se llama Russell. ¿Tú tienes un perro en la casa o tienes un gato? And this way we could use new words. And if they say, oh, no, I have a lizard, then I could say, oh, Alicia tiene un lagartijo en la casa. Clase, wow. And it's just playing up, kind of using a little bit of acting, a little bit of everything's interesting. Wow, clase, wow. Ella tiene un lagartijo en la casa. Ella tiene un perro? And again, they would answer sí or no. And then for a more challenging question, you can call on a student who's usually a high achiever and say, ¿Qué tiene en la casa? What does she have in her house? ¿Qué animal tiene? And then, again, getting reps. Devante, ¿te gustan los perros o te gustan los gatos? And then I have a sentence starter below where they can draw upon. Oh, a mí me gustan los perros en la casa. Oh, Devante prefiere los perros. So you could bring review vocab and do it as well. Y tú, Carmen, ¿tú prefieres los perros o los gatos? ¿Te gustan los perros o los gatos? If you find a student that doesn't have a pet, clase, levanta la mano si no tienes, no tienes, no tienes. And again, hopefully someone with the snapping, they would translate, doesn't have. They raise their hand, I could call on them. Juan, Juan no tiene un animal en la casa. Juan, ¿tú quieres un animal en la casa? ¿Qué animal quieres? ¿Tú quieres un perro? Again, playing around with the yes or no questions, the either or questions, and the more challenging depending on the differentiation for a student you know that can handle that. Or do you want another animal? Oh, tú tienes un perro. ¿Tú quieres otro perro en la casa? Again, this way, this would last about 5 minutes. It's a technique called circling within comprehensible input strategies, and it just gives them a repetition so they remember the words. You can also do activities with that where if they need a little brain break, they could quiz each other going back and forth from their notes, or they could have a brain break actually and get up, practice gestures. I've done like a music activity where they stop and regroup, moving around the room, regroup in a group of 3 and quiz each other on vocab and gestures. That way they're getting movement, they're getting a little bit of socialization in the middle of class. So then that's where I would pivot into the comprehension activity of the day. I just gave an example of a very short, simple story, maybe the first couple weeks of a Spanish 1 class. So I would have a copy of this for students, and often give, especially as they move throughout the year, I give them a chance to look at their notes and annotate the copy, and work together in that way. And then I would read for the class. Eduardo es un chico de Cuba. Eduardo tiene un perro. I really think it's important to anchor cultural awareness within stories. So whether it's just the diversity of the Latin world and the different cultures that make up communities here in the US and in Latin America and Spain, I like to anchor my stories in cultural content. I would read the story. Tiene un perro, again, the same vocab with some review vocab, perhaps. He likes to spend time with the dog. He likes to walk with the dog. The dog's name is Pepito. Pero, and again, just playing up the drama, playing up the clase. Pero Eduardo quiere más animales en la casa. Más animales. And so after I finished reading one time, I would typically ask some yes or no questions, go back to some circling activity to ask about Eduardo. And again, having them react, having them respond, so that they are engaged as a whole group. And you could also do techniques with the picture. Mira, ¿quién es él? Pointing at the picture, kind of live. Oh, se llama Eduardo. Tiene un perro, tiene un gato. Just quizzing them. ¿Dónde está? ¿Dónde está? That's a deeper question, because it's a question word, which they are gradually acquiring in level 1. So where are they? ¿Dónde está? Mira, está en la playa, está en el mar, está en Cuba. Cuba es una isla. It's an island. He's on the beach. He's on the sea. After that, at the bottom or on the back of their copy, they would usually have some multiple choice so that I can check for understanding. So the multiple choice, clarify the name of the boy, just a very simple example. And what he has, what animal he has in the house, and that he wants more animals. Moving on to the advanced understanding, I would encourage them, if they finish early, again, this is a differentiation piece, they wouldn't lose points for not excelling on this. I would encourage everybody to try, but the ones that can actually start piecing together sentences and showing they're exceeding the standard are that would be easily notable as I move around the room with monitoring notes, just to kind of mark them off, and I could see that collecting the work at the end of the day as well. So with writing, I would often give them a sentence starter that helps them feel a little more at ease, and that's a scaffold. Let's see. And then other activities that I use regularly, we did the example of the short story, listening to songs that have simplified lyrics, or pulling a section in the chorus that has the vocab word, summarizing and giving them the chance to summarize. I use leveled readers. There's level 1 readers that I've used a lot in class, so that they can read about what they want. It's not always just me picking the material. That's a great way to give them some choice, but I've done summaries with that. You can often tell how deep their summary is and what they understand. And then I mentioned the writing activities with sentence starters, so that touches on several standards within one lesson. Definitely grammar content can be presented. We were looking at present tense in the story, so you could give them some targeted grammar practice or a pop-up with a video online and have them fill in the blanks, or have them do some online practice. There's some great sites for that if you want them to pay attention to noticing what's happening with the verbs or different elements of the grammar as well. Hopefully that was sufficient. I know it was a lot of kind of like meta teaching. Oh, this would happen, they would respond like this, but hopefully that was enough to give you an idea. And if not, I would be happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.